welcome to Chillingham Castle, reputedly the most haunted castle in England. My name's Jim, I'm your tour guide for the next couple of hours. Are you all believers? Or are there some sceptics amongst you? I was a bit sceptical until I came here to work, and sharp changed my mind. This place is very haunted. And I'll tell you some of my experiences as we go around. I've got to remind you, it's a ghost tour, it's not a ghost hunt. Having said that though, sometimes things do happen on these tours. You know, we don't use any gimmicks here. If you experience anything here tonight, it is for real. It's quite common for visitors to maybe get a tap on the shoulder, poke in the back, something of that nature, especially on the staircases. Now, it was a few years ago that happened to my wife. She didn't believe in the ghosts until one afternoon she was coming out of the museum there. She was coming down the spiral staircase in the southeast tower, and something jabbed her hard in the back, right between the shoulder blades. Of course, she turned around expecting to see me behind her. Nobody there. And she hardly spoke a word all afternoon. I didn't find this out till later on, you know, when we got home. She doesn't come here very often. She finds it a very oppressive place. I love it. I would be doing the ghost tours if I didn't. Have you got cameras? Because, you know, get some fascinating snapshots on camera. Lots of orbs, these light anomalies caught on digital devices, are always associated with haunted places, and many people believe them to be like an early manifestation of a spirit. You're free to take as many pictures as you want. Feeling nauseous, physically sick. And I'm told by other guys, we've even had people who for some reason haven't physically been able to enter into this room through the door there. Again, it doesn't happen very often, but occasionally we have had people physically assaulted in here by some unseen force. Now, that happened on one of my tours, would have been last November. There was a lady on holiday here in the village. She came on the tour on her own. Her husband wasn't very well that night. He stayed in the cottage. And this lady, she was stood, well, just where you are, sir, just next to the, to the bed there.
I'll just move a bit.
And, no, she never said anything at the time. She approached me privately at a later stage in the tour and told me what happened. She was stood across there, and she said that she could smell burning in the room. The left side of her face became very hot and itchy, and I shone my torch on her left cheek, and she had several scratches on that cheek, two of which had actually broken through the skin. She never said anything to anybody else. She didn't make a display of it at all. She spoke to me and told me that privately. So, I mean, people may say, well, she could have done it herself. Why would she do that herself? As I say, she didn't make a big deal out of it. Didn't broadcast it to the rest of the visitors. I've actually been locked in this room. I was working night shift here some years ago. There was a Ouija board going on across the opposite side of the room to where I'm standing, and people on the Ouija board had encountered some very angry spirits who were threatening to do all sorts of harm to them, and the glass, it was whizzing violently around the board. I didn't like the way this group of people who were purposely winding up these spirits, you know, to get a reaction. So I came off the Ouija board, bearing in mind that when they leave at 4 o'clock in the morning, I've got to come back into the castle to secure the place, etc. So I left them to it. I went straight downstairs, I paid a visit to the bathroom, I was washing my hands and I looked in the mirror. I developed like a broad red mark right down the left side of my face, as if I'd been struck with a, I don't know, a belt or something like that perhaps. There wasn't any pain or discomfort, but I had a distinctive red band right down my left cheek. Next time I looked, this mark had just disappeared. That was after having just left this room here. I had quite a frightening experience in here. It would have been October 2014. There was a visiting vigil group called Mysteria, and the medium with the group was called John Blackburn. He's been on telly. I don't know if any of you might have heard of him. And it was an October night. It was pitch black in here. I tell you, you couldn't even see the person standing next to you. It was pitch black. The medium stood in the centre of the room, and there were 7, 8 of us formed a circle of protection around him, all holding hands. And the medium, he made contact with a spirit man who gave the name John. Supposedly this John Sage, the evil presence here at the castle. And I say that because the medium, and there were 2 psychics in the group, they could actually see this spirit man, and they said he was massive. He stood head and shoulders above any of us present in the room. They described him as being bald-headed. He was of a horrid facial appearance, wearing a long robe or a coat, something of that nature. The medium began asking him just a few basic questions for yes, no replies. And this spirit man, he was using, there's a heavy bench across there, he was using that bench there to tap out his replies on the 4 boards. 1 tap for yes, 2 for no, or vice versa. As all mediums tend to do when you see them on the television, you tend to say to these spirit people, are you happy for us being here in the room with you? Or would you prefer for us to leave? And sort of domestic stuff, servants up here. Perhaps this room was used as quarters for servants in times gone by. I mean, we don't know because, of course, there's no records to say so. This room here is the most popular room for these vigil groups to come and do their seances in, and that's simply because they get results. They get a lot of results here, and they're not always very pleasant. Does everybody feel all right in here tonight? Yeah? Well, there's 18 of us, you know. I suppose there's safety in numbers. But these vigil groups who come, you know, people like to do a lone vigil in here, see if they can stick it out for a couple of minutes in the dark, you know, on their own. But having said that, there is always somebody just outside of that door in case, you know, something happens and they suddenly panic perhaps. But it's a very active room. There's a lot of funny things going on up here. I was talking to a lady at the back end of last year who she was staying at the castle, and she said the previous afternoon she came into this room and she was looking at there's a replica helmet on the windowsill there. She was looking, she picked her helmet up and she was having a look, and she heard a noise right behind her, and she quickly turned her head round and she saw a black figure suddenly just disappear around the back of this suit of armour, disappeared into the void. And she didn't hang about, she was over here in the flash, I tell you. That void in there is where the original staircase was. When these towers were first built in the 12th century, the staircases were all on the outer walls, these very narrow, you know, twisting staircases. Now, in the late 1400s, once gunpowder came along, it was easy to breach the outer walls with cannon, you know, and gain access to the stairwells. So the stairs were all taken out. They were converted into latrines, and the staircases were replaced on the courtyard side, like the one, you know, the one we've just come up. And it's nice and spacious, isn't it? Nice and broad compared to these original narrow twisting ones. Now we're told that the lord of the castle, he would hang all his best clothing, you know, his silks and whatever, in the recess here. And apparently the stench and the fumes from the waste down below would keep the insects from eating his best of clothing. So I suppose as long as he gave everything a good airing before he put it on, it'd be alright. But yeah, they were converted into latrines. I mean, they were dirty, smelly places, castles, you know, they really were. Nothing hygienic about them, and there would be bodies around the wall as well, you know, suspended in cages and such like. You think of the smells.
Lovely.
Right, well look, I think we'll leave this John Sage up here, although he does have The other is Lady Mary Barclay, or she's sometimes referred to as the Grey Lady or Lady Grey. Up until 1931, when I mentioned outside the family got hit with death duties and abandoned the castle, the lady of the castle here was Leonora Bennett, and she was a very psychic lady. And during her years spent at the castle, she had many experiences of the paranormal. And it was in 1925 she wrote a short booklet simply called The Ghosts of Chillingham Castle. And in that booklet she makes mention of her, or some of our experiences, and she makes particular mention of the Blue Boy and of Lady Mary Barclay. So who better than her to tell you about these two spirit characters? So what I'll do now, I'll read you a couple of extracts from her booklet in which she makes mention of them. Now, the content of our booklet, it was actually broadcast on BBC Radio that same year, 1925. So she starts off here. Perhaps our principal and most famous apparition was known as the Radiant Boy, which used to be seen in what is now called the Pink Room. There, when from the clock tower the hour of midnight sounded, were heard the cries and moans of a child in pain and in agony of fear. Always the noises came from a spot nearest to a passage cut through the 10 feet thick wall into the adjoining tower. And as the blood-curdling cries died slowly away, a bright halo of light began to form close to the old four-poster bed. Anyone sleeping there saw, gently approaching them, the figure of a young boy dressed in blue and surrounded by the light. She goes on to say that it was in this wall later that the bones of a boy of tender years and some fragments of a blue dress were discovered. These poor remains were reverently removed and decently interred in consecrated ground, since when the figure has never been seen again. Now, the last documented sighting of the blue boy was in 1918. So Humphrey still uses the pink room as a guest bedroom, and over the years none of these guests have seen an apparition in there, but what many of them have seen are flashes of blue light coming from the wall area where this boy's skeletal remains were taken from. Now, it was a common belief in medieval times that, and in later times, that if you did not get a Christian burial, you wouldn't be able to move on to the kingdom of heaven. This boy eventually got a Christian burial because his remains were taken and he's buried in the churchyard next door to the castle. But could it be he comes back to that room in visitation? Could it be perhaps that when his remains were removed, some small parts got missed? You know, something that is like a toe bone or finger bone, something like that. Could it be because of his beliefs? He believes he can't move on entirely because there's a bit of his physical body still walled up in there. That's one possible explanation. It's him coming back in visitation, and, you know, hence the flashes of blue light. Why would a young boy be bricked up within the thickness of a castle wall anyway? I mean, it's a total mystery who he is or who he was. Could he perhaps have, you know, I don't know, been a spy? Or could he have perhaps overheard some private conversation, you know, and been discovered, and as a punishment walled up within that room? Total mystery. Our next best known, and she says authenticated ghost. She says authenticated because early last century, parts of the castle were rented out to wealthy families, and some of those families also witnessed the spirit of this Lady Mary Berkeley. Our next best known and authenticated ghost is that of Lady Mary Berkeley, wife of Ford, Lord Grey of Warp and Gillingham, still looking for her errant husband. That gentleman ran away with her own sister Harriet, thus giving rise to a great scandal and a lawsuit before the famous, or shall we say infamous, Judge Jeffreys in the reign of King Charles II. This was 1682. The end of it all was a heartless desertion. The poor lady was left in her dark and lonely castle with only a fatherless baby girl as her companion. And she says, to this day, the rustle of her dress is sometimes heard along the corridors and stairs, and as the disappointed and anxious wraith passes by, a chill as of cold air seems to sweep through one's very marrow. Now, I don't know, have some of you seen those haunted when they came to Gillingham? I'm sure we were the first episode of the first series. It's quite some years ago now. And if you watched Most Haunted, you'd be aware of the celebrity medium who used to be on there, this Derek Acora. Well, he's since been back to the castle, although it's many years ago now, and he tells us that Lady Mary Berkeley is the strongest presence here. She rules here. She rules over any of the other spirits who are either grounded here or, who come in visitation. And I suppose why not? This was her castle. She was a lady of the castle here in the latter part of the 17th century. A very active room, this. Mediums tell us there are a lot of children's spirits come to this room in visitation. And every now and again, it doesn't happen regularly, but every now and again, when I come through this room late at night, or sometimes in the early hours of the morning, always when I'm on my own, I sometimes have little bits of grit or stone, something like that, thrown at me. Sometimes I'll feel something hit my clothing. Other times I'll hear something, land on the floor. And when I quiz mediums about this, they say it's almost certainly child spirits, just playing little pranks, letting me know that they're about it, that I'm not alone here. Nothing terrible. I quite enjoy the experience, to tell you the truth. And when something like that happens, I'll stop and I'll speak to them. I cannot see. I don't have any special qualities. I cannot see any spirits or converse with them. But I'll stop and I'll have a word with them, and I'll wish them well and continue on. I've been involved in lots of seances in here, and we generally stand in a circle holding hands. And for some reason, it's always the ladies, but the ladies, they get their clothing pulled and tugged in here during the seances. And again, mediums say it's children. Again, just getting up to a little bit of mischief, playing pranks. But I've seen ladies who are quite upset at what's happening to them.
Yeah.
It's just the frames.
In the back there. Right in the center.
So this is obviously the oldest part of the castle. This tower dates from the early 12th century. And before the stone tower was here, there would have been a wooden tower. The Normans would build Mott and Bailey type structures, with wood, and once they got established and decided to stay, of course they would later convert to stone and expand the residence over the coming years and centuries. You can see there would have been another room up above here originally, and you can see there's the doorway there leading from the spiral staircase into the upper room. And this room's been used off and on as a chapel since the early 1300s. It's very much haunted by a 12-year-old spirit girl called Eleanor. Now, mediums do pick up on Eleanor here, and mediums say that she's a very timid, a very frightened young spirit girl. She tells that she was brought here and she was, for the amusement of the soldiers, she was used and abused by them. And at 12 years of age, she tells that she developed like a pneumonia type of condition. And close to death, she managed to crawl into this room under what was then the raised floor area. Back in the late 1500s, early 1600s, the floor area here was raised some 3 feet or so. So it was on the same level as the great hall that we've just come out of. And it was underneath the floor area that she managed to crawl close to death, and she curled up. She curled up and she died in this corner here. Now, would you believe Leonora Bennett, who wrote about the ghosts of Chillingham, she used this room as her writing room. And during renovation work here, early last century, the skeletal remains of a young girl were found in that very corner. Obviously, this spirit girl, Eleanor, that mediums pick up on. And for whatever reason, she's grounded herself here. She's very timid, very frightened of men to this day, she tells, because of the way she was abused during her young life. but she tells that she is fascinated by modern day women's clothing, their hairstyles, you know, that jewellery, that sort of thing. And it has been known for Eleanor to interact with ladies on these ghost tours. Now, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. I'll be honest with you, more often than enough nothing happens. But occasionally we do have a lady who maybe has her hair touched, her face touched, earrings played with. Was it a couple of months back, there was a lady sat more or less where you are, and the tail just raised in the air and just let drop. And there was nobody sitting behind her. And the lady next to her, she was I suppose a peroxide blonde. She had no hair touched and her face touched. And those two ladies had the more distinctive hairstyles, if you like, amongst the rest of the group. So she seemed to target the ladies with the more distinctive hairstyles. But sometimes ladies will experience like a static electric all around their head, you know, that sort of a sensation. So what we tend to do here, I mean, if you're all willing to sit very quietly with the lights off, would you like to see if Eleanor, if she's present, if she will interact with any of you ladies? Do you want to give it a go? Just for a couple of minutes. I said before, I don't have any special gifts. I mean, I don't know whether Eleanor is here with us now. If she is here, she knows what we would like her to do. So we'll give it 2 or 3 minutes and we'll see if there's anything happens. There's nothing to be frightened of, there's nothing terrible happens. Okay, I'll just blow this candle. So if we just sit very quietly here. There's a lot of spirit dogs being seen here at the castle over the years. And of course all castles have lots of dogs. The lord of the castle would spend much of his leisure time out hunting with his hounds. Maybe he's wondering why there are 2 fireplaces in here. I mean, this is the original, we've got the big medieval fireplace here, you know, with the oven. But I don't know whether some of you might have missed it, but we've got a smaller fireplace just here. Now, where this small fireplace is, the smaller one, that covers the original stairwell which led downstairs to the dungeons. They're actually underneath the floor area here. And in the early 1600s, Great Chillingham, he wanted to distance himself from all the atrocities, all the evil acts that went on downstairs in that earlier brutal medieval period. So what he decided to do was, he decided to block up the chambers down below, seal them up, and he chose to put a fireplace across the stairwell because fire is a cleanser. He wanted to cleanse the area of all the atrocities that went on downstairs. I'll give you a couple of minutes to have a look around. Please don't sit down on anything in here. Get a surprise. people they're staying here. So they're not in the building house here. Right, ladies and gentlemen, this here is a return torture chamber. You would never get a torture chamber or dungeons on ground floor level. They were always below the ground. This was actually used as a storeroom. Of course, it's nice and cool in here, you know, for preservation of foodstuffs. And it is an immensely strongly constructed building. Its barrel vaulted shape supports the weight of the great hall up above. And up above that we've got all the staterooms. So there's a tremendous load that bears down on this structure here. Right, the spiked barrel. Just look at all the spikes inside of there. Now, if you were a lady, maybe suspected of witchcraft, and you were brought here to Chillingham Castle, you may well have been put into a barrel like this and let roll down the hillside. And, I mean, there's nobody would survive that journey, would they? Yeah. There are legends of soldiers putting children into these barrels simply for fun. And, you know, betting on the outcome. You've got to remember, back in medieval times, life was very, very cheap. It would mean nothing for a soldier to put a child or anybody into a barrel like this simply for fun. It was a very brutalised society. Life was very cheap. Over here we've got an iron griddle bed, and victims would be shackled by the ankles, by the wrists. These prongs here would keep the naked body in position, and fires would be lit underneath them. The victims would be roasted alive very slowly on these beds of iron.
How long do you have, you reckon?
Pardon?
How long do you have, you reckon?
I've got no idea. I've got no idea. I mean, these things were used right throughout the Middle Ages and later, and in later times, you know. Tudor times, even Stuart times perhaps. And often the castle torture would actually be the castle blacksmith, you know, and he would make a lot of the equipment. And he would take great pride in it as well. Over here, I mean, this is the rack here. This is just a model, and you can see it's very basic, this one. But the rack was the preferred method of torture in all castles throughout continental Europe from the late Middle Ages onwards. And of course, victims they'd be stripped naked. They would be tethered by the wrists, by the ankles. Questions would be put for information, or maybe confessions wanted, and if they weren't forthcoming, victims would be stretched on the rack until possibly, you know, limbs were pulled from out of their sockets. Now you imagine what could be done if you were spread-eagled on the rack there. You were entirely at the mercy of the torturer. Quite often the victim would was it his vocal cords? You know, he'd be in so much pain, he'd be screaming, he'd break his vocal cords. The sounds of sinews, you know, stretching, bones popping, that sort of thing. It was actually common practice for the torturer to lead the victim around the torture chamber and explain in minute detail what was going to happen to them if they didn't confess. And more often than enough, prisoners would confess without the need for torture. Would you arrive somewhere like Chillingham Castle with any guarantees you weren't going to be tortured anyway? As I say, you were here entirely at the mercy of the Lord of the Castle. He was the law of the land, and could basically do whatever he wanted to, whoever he wanted, without question. There's another tunnel runs the length of this room, and it's where the the horse-drawn carriages used to be stalled
Ah, I
at
wonder
one
what that was.
time. In more recent times, this lower part of the room was used as a coal house, and coal lorries would drive into the tunnel and deposit the coal, you know, through the chutes here, and the coal would, you know, fire up the boilers to heat the place. The spike chair, I mean, this is just a model, but I mean, these chairs did exist, and you wouldn't want to sit on there, would you? So, you put it across your thighs,
Oh.
and slowly but surely, just out of tiredness, you know, you would succumb to those spikes. And it wouldn't kill you, but again, you know, think of the,
Yeah.
you know, the infections you would get, blood poisoning perhaps. Over here we've got some original thumb screws, finger screws. Now these were very, very popular forms of torture, especially used against women and children. And you know, with a big WD-40 on you imagine your fingers or your thumbs placed beneath, you see the two serrated edges there,
Oh, yeah.
just slowly crushed beneath that
Chopped
iron
off.
plate. They were very popular, and simply because they got results, it caused excruciating pain.
Did you have a smile on your face then, did I see?
I mean, this isn't a real thing, but Henry VIII, he had an Act of Parliament passed which stated that a lady convicted of murdering her husband or being implicated in her husband's murder could be boiled alive as an alternative to being burnt at the stake. It was classed as petty treason because the lady, in killing her husband, she robbed the king of her husband's service during wartime, and the punishment for that was to be burnt at the stake. This method wasn't very often used. Most women were burned at the stake. And if the executioner was merciful, he would strangle the lady before the flames took hold. If this method was used, she'd simply be stripped and hauled up a scaffold, by the ankles and just let plunge head first into the boiling vat, which would have been, I'll tell you, a lot quicker death would have been pretty instantaneous compared to being burned at the stake, which wasn't a quick death.